to see
But right,
how the process went. There might be changes that,
yeah, she was very
Come out of
clear
it.
that she was not.
Yeah.
Oh, are we supposed to sit back there? We're just observing? Are we supposed to sit back there?
I don't know that it matters. What, are you part of the board?
No,
Oh, okay.
so we
yes.
sit back there?
Yes.
I moved my bag.
Oh, okay.
So how
Who are you? I'm good.
So she'll be here in a few minutes. I will stay here. Until I can introduce her. You have your. Oh, yeah, the speaking one. Here. So leave it over there. Okay, and Mr. Wood, did you get your speaking points?
I have this,
Perfect.
is that the same one?
Okay, so,
I see chair. Is there a? So there's, everything I have says chair. Should there be a second one?
She wanted that what she said. No, sir, that's what you needed.
Okay,
All right, you can sit down for just 1 minute.
Yes.
Okay, for those that don't know, I'm Krista Stegmiller, chairperson of, the Independent Ethics Review Board for the City of Sugar Land. I hereby call to order, the special Independent Ethics Review Board meeting on Tuesday, March 28th at 4:26 p.m. Okay. Do you want to enter?
Okay, yes, hi. I'd like for everybody to meet Robin Cross, the outside attorney that has been hired to answer your legal questions and assist you through this process. As the city employee, I am conflicted out. So any questions or concerns you have about this process or during these procedures, please direct them to Ms. Cross. I will provide her email if necessary. So this time, it's about.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes, ma'am.
would you please do our execute our roll call?
Okay. And you're called first every day.
Thank you.
Okay, Ann Maleka, are you here? Okay. Mikel Roberts, are you here?
Here.
Steve Trulli? You here? Yes. Rachel? Is Rachel online? Okay, Rachel is not here. Ted Lieb? I am here. Myself, I'm here. Larry LeBou? Larry, are you online? Chris Crosby?
Right here.
Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 6.
Plus me, Krista Stegmiller,
Plus
I'm
Chris,
present as well, so we have 7.
7 here, 2 absent. Which I believe makes a
We
quorum.
have 4, that's correct.
Yes.
So everybody here in the room will be voting and the vote will count for each one today.
Got a little message notification.
Oh.
Right, with this bottom right,
Bottom right message.
on the screen, is that showing message? What is that?
Oh, no.
Oh, I think that's just your computer message. Okay, so the purpose of this special meeting is to review a sworn complaint that was filed with the city secretary on February 28th, alleging a violation of the Code of Ethical Conduct by a Planning and Zoning Commissioner, Sapna Patel. In accordance to section 299 of the Code of Ethical Conduct, our review today is strictly to determine if sufficient cause exists to proceed with an investigation or whether the complaint should be dismissed. We are not discussing the merit and the actual substance context in that regard of the complaint itself. It's strictly to effectuate section 299 of the Code of Ethical Conduct. So we do have a report that was provided, or memorandum from City Attorney Meredith. Has everybody had a chance to review the memo and the documents that were provided with the complaint itself?
Yes.
So I'm going to go just for formal purposes. I'm going to review, not in detail, but I will do step by step of the memo because it follows directly in alignment with the code with respect to whether or not the complaint meets the criteria to warrant a prospective investigation. So firstly, the city attorney reviewed whether the allegations were made timely. The complaint was filed on February 28th, 2023, and relates to conduct that allegedly occurred on February 22nd, 2023. Section 296 requires that the complaint be filed within 1 year of the date of the violation that has been alleged to have occurred. She concluded that it was submitted timely. Whether the allegations were made against a person regulated by the code, the complaint was regarding a city planning and zoning commissioner, and the city attorney concluded that the allegations made against the person regulated under the code. And then whether the allegations, if true, might reasonably constitute a violation of the code. Section 2-77 discusses the specifics relating to the conflict of interest, and Meredith, or the city attorney, excuse me, did indicate that the subject matter of the complaint is governed by the Code of Ethical Conduct. The request, by the complaint was signed and sworn by the notary public. We do have the signed and sworn complaint within our packet. Has that also been reviewed?
Yes.
So at this time, I want to open it up to discussion relating specific as to whether or not this complaint, based upon the Code of Ethical Conduct, would rise to the level of needing or warranting an investigation, or whether it would be dismissed. And I will pull the section of, okay. I'm going to read section 299A sub 1 through 3, just so we have the very specific verbiage with respect to the procedures. So our role as the board is to render a decision as to whether this complaint should be 1, dismissed as frivolous, 2, dismissed because the subject conduct was undertaken in good faith reliance on the formal written opinion of the city attorney, or 3, investigated. So at this time, and with that information, I'm going to open it up for discussion.
I will start. I do believe all the correct procedures have been followed for filing the complaint. That it meets all of the requirements and guidelines to be accepted and determine whether or not we are going to choose one, 2, or 3 options in 299. I feel that it is worth investigating based on the ethics policies and on the documentation that was provided to us. And we're only operating as a grand jury at this point. So I will share that.
Thank you for your comments. Who else has additional commentary or questions?
I have one
Yes.
comment.
Mhm.
I like the analogy of a grand jury,
Mhm.
but the burden of proof is different. The standard.
Correct, but I just want to make sure.
Right.
They understood.
It's just, you pass this along.
Correct, we're not
Right.
deciding if anything was done right or wrong, merely,
Correct.
is it worth looking at? And
Correct.
I think in
You're
terms
not-
of our
you're
job,
not
is it worth
the
looking at?
merits. You're just, does it pass this basic threshold? And it's a civil preponderance more likely than not.
Okay,
That was my only lawyer-like objection.
no, please.
Yes.
We don't want you to have driven here in traffic for no reason.
No, I didn't run over anybody in the parking lot.
So this is Raquel. I would agree that all of the items that need to, I guess, be considered as by way of a checklist, essentially, that everything passes muster. So the allegations were made timely. The allegations were made against a person regulated by the code. I do believe that there could be a potential conflict of interest. There is not enough information about the intent for the post. I think that would need to be explored a bit. In terms of whether or not the request for a hearing was when informed that evidence was made available, and the city attorney has issued a written opinion. And the city attorney did recommend,
Just a point of clarification, the city attorney,
yeah.
okay, sorry, she's
Not
indicated
that-
she has not issued a written opinion relating to the allegation. This is a memorandum that asserts whether or not it meets the criteria under the code itself.
Thank you for that clarification. And that does follow procedure that she, in fact, did evaluate the basis of whether or not this should even come to us. And I think, again, all of those things check off correctly. So I'm in favor of moving forward with the complaint being investigated.
Thank you for those comments.
I also agree with everybody. I mean, all the procedures were followed correctly. I think there are clear violations of the ethic value section 272, and I feel that it should be further investigated.
So at this point, not to jump the gun, because everyone hasn't had a chance to have comments, so are there additional specific comments, or do we want to move into motions at this time?
So how much can we comment about this situation? We can't get into details, right? We just sort of on the merit or the.
You don't really need to address the merits here. It's just, she's just polling the membership to see if you want to make comments on the one thing that's assigned to you, which is, do you want to dismiss it as frivolous? Do you want to dismiss it, because there was good faith reliance on a formal written opinion of the city attorney, which city attorneys indicated there was no formal written opinion. Or do you want to investigate it and deal with the merits in a public hearing at a later
So
time?
those 3 points, only. So
Yes, sir.
I'm in favor of investigating.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we investigate.
Okay,
I'll second.
second, all in favor of conducting an investigation of this complaint?
Aye.
Motion carries. We will move forward into next steps regarding an investigation of the merit of the complaint. Today was only with respect to the procedural components.
Correct. So at this time, we want to ask whether or not there's evidence that they want to see in the public hearing. You can invite that at this time.
So let's go down this path. So we've had this discussion before when we were looking at articles and things of that nature. What are the types of either documents or individuals we would like to speak to when we move forward in this process? So with respect to the investigation, whom do we wish to speak? And what materials or documents or timeline do we need to have better understanding of so that we could make a better informed opinion based on the merit of the case itself or allegation?
One thing I like to see is just specifically how her position as a realtor, how that would benefit her as a company individual. I mean, that wasn't super clear.
To that end, I would like to have a better understanding of the composition of the board.
Right.
So, I mean, is she the only realtor on the P and Z commission, or is that, are there other individuals that would be impacted by that occupation?
That, and then also just, was there anything she disclosed in that was not public knowledge?
And I did see that it,
It had been, approved by the council already, but was there anything else in there that would have been considered as, private, privy information and not public?
So it was not approved by city council officially.
It wasn't approved.
So
It says the city council approved the first reading.
The first reading.
So it wasn't until March 2nd that they approved the amendment on the second reading.
Right. But it had become public knowledge.
So that's one of the things you want clarified in the
Yes.
second meeting is where it was in the process.
yes. And to that end, in the memo that we received, it said on March 7th that council approved the amendment on the second reading, and the next step was to develop the district requires an action recommendation from planning and zoning commission. So has that occurred? What is that action?
Yes.
What is the procedural steps around that as well?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
For the purpose of justice, I would like to see that Ms. Patel was provided and trained on the ethics. So there should have been documentation of training, and I believe they're supposed to sign off on it. Because if they're not aware of it, that changes the ballgame. So,
Well, and future steps, so this alludes to additional steps may have already occurred or may not, I'm not aware, and that's a question we have. But have any future actions been taken by the individual during that process with P and Z? So have they voted on anything else? Have they, been a part of actioning the item itself?
How long has she been on the board?
Time served or, and the duration of term, right? So how much longer is she currently a commissioner?
Can we ask what her voting record was?
We can absolutely ask that, yes, with respect to this particular item or all
In general.
in general.
Al, your point, as far as a real estate agent, realtor is a great point, so. How is she voting?
Okay.
Pretty important.
I think that's definitely something that should be reviewed.
I would be interested in the additional posts that came after.
Subsequent posts.
So comments from the public.
Comments and additional posts on the professional Facebook page.
Yes.
And I think along with that, yeah, that maybe even the one or two before, depending, were there any disclaimers or any sort of disclosures about the role? Because you catch one little snippet, that might not tell the whole picture.
Right.
And so I want to get them, take the camera lens out a little bit on it.
And if she's made a statement in regards to, or if she would like to. make a statement.
Right. I mean, we would definitely want to invite her to speak on her behalf and communicate
Yeah.
the events and the intent around it as well. And it's.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
The link that was in the documents, was that the total Facebook post? Or was that just a snippet you mentioned it was a snippet?
Yeah, that was just what the mayor actually filed the complaint against, was just that portion.
Yeah, it'd be important to see the whole.
Yes.
Agreed. Agreed. And obviously, I think we would want to interview or, hear from the mayor as well, the person who filed the complaint. To better understand. And, both sides.
Yes.
I'd like to know if there were any staff with the real estate company that received any communication from the public that could have been in response.
Okay, that's a good point. So like subsequent to the post that's in question or under discussion, have there been public action or comments around it directly back to the entity or organization?
So short term would be the Facebook response, but then longer term, not even longer term, but beyond that immediate response, there could have been some reaching out to the realtor.
I'd like to see when the post was deleted in comparison to when the complaint was filed.
Well, I mean, do we know if it's been deleted?
I tried to go
Okay.
I thought I saw read something, because that points to they're acknowledging that something incorrectly was done and they made an effort to rectify it versus I wasn't gonna do anything until I got called out on it
Well, I mean,
publicly.
we can't assume rectification, right? So I mean, it was.
Correct.
We don't know the intent.
But see, was it still up until the complaint was filed or was it removed before?
Anyone else you would want to hear from? I mean, based on some of our past discussions and things that are similar in nature, we've talked about other commissioners or board members, if there was an attempt to influence a decision. I mean, we need obviously the voting record and a better understanding of that whole process in its entirety, but it might not be out of the realm of possibility that we need to discuss, or have questions for her peers. I don't know. Or it depends on what information we get on the onset too, right? So,
Right.
I guess we could ask the mayor how he found out about it. Like, whoever informed.
And that's one of the questions you can ask when you have him come in front of you. So you can sort of make a list of questions on your own that you want to ask at that time.
If they have a chairman of the board she's on that would like to make a comment, and of course, any of her peers, if they would like to.
Absolutely.
Give comment, that would be it.
Can we ask about qualifications to be on the P and Z?
Oh, I think that's a great question. Absolutely. Because that goes back to when I was, asking about composition, like what are the criteria?
So you're looking for both the qualifications to be a realtor and qualifications to serve on the.
To sign on P and Z?
Right. Are there any sectors of businesses or economic development that would be affected by the outcome that you want to hear from? That's a question for you. I'm not suggesting.
Repeat that question again.
Are there any sectors, business sectors, within the community or economic development that are impacted by this proceeding that you want to hear from? Or by your decision? That's a question I don't have an answer.
I think that's challenging to answer or to
Right.
hypothesize around that because truthfully, because we're here to focus on the procedures and just effectuate this particular section. I have not gone and looked at P&Z and I'm not familiar with the item that's under question. So I would need to better understand the actual item that this complaint is around to be able to make a discernment as to, who might be impacted by it.
That'd be pretty broad.
It could be a lot.
But then I guess a follow-up question then becomes, once we start getting some of this data that we're asking for, that could precipitate additional questions that may require, even more research down the road.
So what you're doing now is trying to figure out what evidence you would like to see. And then when you have your public hearing, it may be that you have insufficient evidence. And you may at that time decide that you want to defer and or table and then come back. Okay.
About territory. What's your real estate territory? Was it encompass? the
Like
chart
sales
house?
data,
Yeah, where's she,
concentration.
where's she a realtor, and what area, the specific area, is it just general? I mean, in the post, she had the chart house behind her. You would assume that that is part of her area. I mean, I don't know how real estate works, just could go wherever, or we can need to stay in specific.
I think a good way to show that or to infer that would be looking at concentration of sales data, right?
Well, I think you can ask
Okay,
the individual that information, and if you want to
Look
also
further.
ask perhaps the business that she works for, but it's not in the nature of a public information act request that you do readily obtain.
And I agree, like you said, things will come uncovered, and I'm looking forward to learning more about this because I understand there is maybe a citizen group that's kind of against some of this development, and I don't know if that would be something to inviting that group or someone from that representing that group that against this development, and that's just hearsay, maybe that is.
Hearsay is admissible in the proceeding, but it would be hearsay as to whether or not a violation occurred. So you're looking at the merits, and I don't know if that affects the merits or not any more than inviting an outside sector involves the merits either way. I don't know if she's affiliated with a particular group, but I don't, even if she is, don't know if that affects the merits. So is there anything else that would help you make up your mind on the merits that you want to see in terms of evidence.
I have a question that I want to interject as we're going down this path. I did, upon reviewing the code, I did notice that it says the accused official, former official, or candidate may file with the Independent Ethics Review Board a response to the complaint within 10 calendar days after his or her receipt of the Independent Ethics Board decision to proceed. So we have not, I know that the person whom the complaint is alleged against has received the complaint, but to our knowledge, we have not, and this is after we decide to
Right,
proceed,
so
but
it's
we haven't
after,
received
you
anything.
haven't received anything because you haven't made a decision yet.
Okay,
Well, you made a decision just now.
right,
So upon her receipt of that decision, she has the right to a rebuttal, if you will, or provide information. And certainly she can take into account what you said you want to see
okay.
in terms of information. And she may or may not include that in her rebuttal.
So I just wanted to ask
Sure.
procedurally with respect to this, if we do receive it, will it be by way, like, will Meredith send this over through you or logistically?
Procedurally, when you're sitting in a quasi judicial capacity, normally the information is provided to you at that time at a public hearing. And I believe that the code addresses that the decision is to be made at a public hearing. So normally I would think you would have that, you might receive that particular item in advance, but since it's going to be part of your consideration, it may well be that you would consider it at that public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
It's kind of like planning and zoning itself
Mhm.
operates on a quasi judicial capacity and some of the matters it considers. There's an agenda, so does city council. There's an agenda packet with certain information, but there's also information adduced in the public hearing when they have public hearings. And they open a hearing and sometimes they'll take some emails into account and open a public hearing that way if it's a federal grant. And then they'll run that through the duration of the council meeting. Sometimes they will open up the public hearing at the meeting itself and take information that way and then close that public hearing. So for purposes of this, I'm kind of thinking it's more a public hearing where there's a record being made, those documents are introduced, they become part of that record. So that would be part of the record, and I don't know if you can't guarantee that you'll see it in advance.
Okay,
That makes
sure.
sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I know which way she voted on this project, but it's financial interest in the project, the surrounding properties, if that's something that needs to be looked at.
So your question is whether or not there was a financial interest in any of the property that she was speaking about.
Or either the property itself, or the Char House area, where there's two developers involved in that project, possibly three, but two for sure. So if she's got any financial interest in either one of those companies or financial interest in any of the properties surrounding that.
Okay.
That development.
I'd like to see a current information from HAR. If there's anything on the HAR website where she says anything that could either
Are you
Clear
looking for,
or-
like active listings or?
job description, personal description. I'd also like to know, have there been other disciplinary cautions from P and Z, either specifically about this or others? Somebody said, "Wouldn't do that if I were you." And that was ignored. I'm sure something like that might have, if something like that would have come up, it would be in their minutes. I want to know from P and Z. Have they seen anything in the past that might have pointed towards this?
Given that P and Z is a volunteer, just as you're volunteers, I don't know that they would necessarily have that capacity, but very generally, that's something you can certainly ask. You indicated you wanted to hear from the chair.
Yeah, so-
Members. So that's certainly something you can address.
And there's not really an HR department that would have kept a record, but there might be a
Again,
minute that referred back
that's
to it.
volunteers, human resources wouldn't really have a record because they're volunteers.
But there might be something that had been referred to in the minutes of one of their meetings
Okay,
that would pertain to this.
or during debate.
Mhm.
Okay.
It doesn't appear we have one with this packet today, but should a conflict of interest form get filed, we would obviously like to
Or
review it.
has one been filed?
Or has one been filed? I guess that's a, thank you, probably a better question. Anything else?
If there had been a conflict of interest form filed. And she should have been precluded from the discussion. Would that make a difference?
I think that's more of a deliberation
Okay.
discussion versus,
It's sort of a legal question, but I won't let it address it this time.
right?
Okay.
Any other items? I think I have, we had a laundry list of
You have a
information.
good, you have a good laundry list. You're good.
If you could do that by 5:30, that'd be,
Well, to that end.
Some of it, maybe.
Sorry.
Bless you.
Yep. So we have carried, motion carried, we've voted, we've discussed items that we would like to see during the public hearing, individuals with whom we would like to speak during the public hearing. I would assume that the city secretary's office will facilitate scheduling as usual.
correct.
And so we'll look for that information. And go forward with the process. Are there any other comments or questions at this time? Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate
Again,
your
I'm
assistance.
sorry, sometimes the Houston and Dallas traffic is difficult.
And thank you to this board. As you mentioned, this is a volunteer board and we're here to serve a purpose for the city. And so it's important that we showed up today and that we're, reviewing it and looking at things critically. Does anybody else have any additional?
One question I have is, we have one of those aha moments up at midnight, you decide there's something else you'd like to see, who we contact or again.
But you can always contact me if you want.
So we'll have your direct contact.
Yes, I brought these little things,
Okay.
it's business.
That'll work.
what are those? I hope they have a QR code on them.
And my cell number is on business. But because I'm a former prosecutor, don't look for me on the appraisal district's website.
Okay.
I'm listed as what they call an unknown owner.
Right.
I won't be so unknown after I file my protest.
Well, it's 4:59 in the interest of time for everyone. Do I have a motion?
A motion that we adjourn this meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Where to go?
Yes, right there.
Free to have experience.